Erupting volcanoes in the country from 6 to 9, yes 9. And, in what is this week's top story, 33-mile-long intrusion. The massive underlying magma dike in central Ethiopia has expanded to 52.6 kilometers or 32.7 miles in length. This magma dike expanded to this length from 35 kilometers long since December 29, primarily expanding to the northeast but also slightly expanding to the southwest. Despite seismic activity continuing to decrease during the last week, it has still remained high, and now since this latest intrusion of magma began, a grand total of 10 magnitude 5 range earthquakes and 91 magnitude 4 earthquakes have struck since December 23, causing widespread damage. However, as long as these earthquakes in an area with many structures not built to withstand them continue, and the risk of an imminent volcanic eruption remains, the 80,000 people currently evacuated are likely to remain away from their homes. There are several new pieces of information, one of which is concerning. For one, the aforementioned magma dike has likely extended to the northern outskirts of the vicinity's largest city, Metehara, which has a population of 21,000. For obvious reasons, it would be disastrous if the magma dike, which is presumably at shallower than 3 kilometers depth, did end up erupting there, but the good news is that this possibility seems unlikely at the present. As, while we have seen unprecedented levels of uplift due to this massive magma intrusion, which I interpret to involve at least 480 million cubic meters of magma, not all of the ground deformation being witnessed is purely uplift. While the northern rift area has risen by a whopping 1.7 meters or 66.9 inches since December 22, with 1.3 meters of this figure occurring since December 29, the southern portion of the aforementioned dike has actually subsided by up to 55 centimeters. The reason for this, at least in my interpretation, is that the expanding magma dike encountered an underlying body of cooling magma associated with the Fentale volcano's 1810 eruption. This body of magma then began draining into the underlying dike, causing the overlying ground to subside by nearly a half-meter. Magma still seems to be flowing towards and expanding to the northeast in the dike, reaching the western end of the rhyolitic Dauphin Shield volcano. However, since this dike contains magma associated with the Fentale volcano, if an eruption were to occur, it would truly be considered an eruption from Fentale. The known recent location and expansion of the magma dike creates increasing evidence that the January 3 explosions witnessed may have been a phreatic volcanic eruption instead of a hydrothermal explosion. Regardless, volcanic unrest is still ongoing here. New eruptions. Meanwhile, in Indonesia, this week saw 3 new eruptions begin, specifically at Luwutolok early on January 5, Diong on January 6, and Karangetang also on January 6. Luwutolok's eruption on Lembata Island has so far only consisted of weak and intermittent ash emissions, rising less than 500 meters above its summit. Whether this progresses to an eventual magmatic eruption remains to be seen. As for the Diong volcano on the island of Java, its Saleri crater produced a brief 57-second phreatic eruption at 10:58 a.m. on January 6. This only created a 100-meter high eruption plume, throwing fragments of mud up to 50 meters beyond the edge of its crater rim. As for Karangetang, slow basaltic andesite lava effusion resumed from its southern lava dome on January 6, which is still ongoing at the present. Ilapongo bubbling. And, in El Salvador, a strong magnitude 6.2 earthquake struck offshore of the country on January 5 at 11:18 a.m. local time. However, this quake caused strong enough shaking translating to a peak MMI of 5.5, causing damage to a dozen homes. Widely posted social media footage also showed what appeared to be an abnormal level of rising gas-forming bubbles on the surface of the Ilapongo volcano's caldera lake. So, did the earthquake cause a change in this explosive volcano which has not erupted since 1880? No, as MMI shaking of 5 or higher is needed to possibly trigger a change, yet the lake experienced maximum shaking of a 4. As confirmed by several locals, the rate of underwater fumaroles degassing was not abnormal after the earthquake, as this level of activity is actually quite typical here. Here is a quick list of all of the world's list of erupting volcanoes which are currently erupting. Additionally, here are some volcanoes showing signs of unrest which are not erupting as of the recording of this video on January 11 of 2025. As a final note, I would like to thank my YouTube channel member Gunai